So just one last point, don't hesitate to register to TDN newsletter with this QR code. We'll let it like a few seconds, and then we can move to the second slide. Just to present this first episode of TDN webinar, our speakers are Siobhan Mullan, William McCarthy, and Ulrike Sorge. Can you move to the next session? Thank you. About the agenda, we will start first with an overview of TDN, the project, its aims, and the diversity of CCC systems. Then we will have a presentation about switching from conventional to CCC rearing farms, and then a case study of mastitis in a CCC system. After all three presentations, we'll have a Q&A session. So please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. Okay, so with this excellent agenda, we will start now with Siobhan Mullan, so the project coordinator of TransformDairyNet Project, and also Professor of Animal Welfare and Veterinary Ethics at University College Dublin. She will start with a general introduction to TransformDairyNet, its objectives, showing examples of the work of the project and the diversity of CCC systems. So let's get started. I'm very pleased to hand over to Siobhan.
Thank you so much, Mathilde. I'm delighted to be here. I'm very excited for the start of our webinar series. Next slide, please, Eva. Yes, so TransformDairyNet is an amazing project. We're just over a year into it now, got another couple of years to go. It is not a research project, so it's importantly called a coordination and support action and thematic network, and it's all about gathering information that exists already in farmer experiences and others, associated vets and so on, and gathering that information and making it available to others. It's a pretty large project, 3 million people, 3 million euros, and we've got 26 partners from 14 countries. Next slide, please, Eva. And I guess a project is only really as good as its partners, and we're absolutely so lucky to have this incredible group of people who are passionate, enthusiastic, and not only that, but also Europe's leading scientists in cow-calf contact systems and farmer organisations matching them as well, supporting the activities of TransformDairyNet. Next slide, please. So I guess our whole objective really of the project is to try and upscale cow-calf contact adoption on dairy farms across Europe. And we'll be doing that through a number of different efforts, mainly using farmer hubs across the network, which I'll explain a little bit more about, but also with some kind of adjunctive supporting activities. So, for example, surveys of what people are doing, what people still need to know about, review of what's in the scientific literature, evaluations of the standards and regulations that are out there already. And our national innovation practice hubs are these farmer and other actor groups, which are already, I suppose, supporting innovation in their own right, but we also have measures in terms of encouraging them to conduct their own living lab experiments and promote innovation. And then all of this information that we will gather, we will make available in a range of methods that are suitable for really driving change. So whether it's addressing specific topics or hearing from farmers directly, case studies and so on about how to go about taking up cow-calf contact dairy farming. Next slide, please. So these national innovation practice hubs, we've got 11 of them across our countries. Some of them are joint countries, so there's a UK and Ireland group, and then there's a Norway and Sweden group. and they are all focused on dairy cows, except that we also have a dairy buffalo group in Italy as well. And these groups, I suppose, really have shown to us how CCC is already in existence across Europe. So some countries, there are already many farmers doing it, and it was easy to form a group. In other countries, I think nearly every country we've found at least one farmer doing it, but in others it's much less common. And most of the groups have got farmers who are interested or currently practicing cow-calf contact. They might also have people from standards organisations like the organic standards. They might have farm advisors. They might have veterinarians as well. So it's very variable. So next slide, please. It would be great to hear a little bit about you and what is your experience of cow-calf contact. So we've just got a little poll here for you, and you've got 4 options. So you've got little knowledge or experience of cow-calf contact farms, familiar with cow-calf contact practices, but it's not part of your work. You do a little work on CCC farms, or you do much work or have worked for a long time with cow-calf contact farms. So there's a lot of responses coming in, which is fabulous. And very shortly, we will share the results with you. Okay, Mathilde, I think just give people another 3 seconds and then we could share the results. Great. It's very interesting to see, and that 37% have little knowledge or experience, 31% are familiar but not part of the work, but 22% are doing a bit of work with cow-calf contact farms, and 13% are doing a lot of work. So great to see that there is lots of experience amongst the audience, but perhaps unsurprisingly, majority of people are not so familiar, and of course that reflects dairy farming in most parts of the world, certainly Europe and many other countries too. Thanks. Next slide, please, Eva. So this is just an example of one of our farmer groups in Norway and Sweden. Stina is the facilitator and she's kindly provided these slides. So far in the first year, they've had 2 meetings, one in Sweden, one in Norway. They've been to visit farms. They've got farmers together, as you can see, around the table, sharing ideas. They've also had online meetings, introductions, discussing what they're going to do for their living lab. So each of these can apply for €8,000 to run a sort of some sort of innovation experiment. They've had a specific focus on automatic milking systems and a specific focus on separating cows and calves. And that's definitely one of the topics that people are always asking about. Next slide, please. Their living lab that they have applied for and that has been reviewed and has been agreed by an external board is going to be around looking at different management practices to try and reduce separation stress. So this was something that they were feeling as a group that they would like to look at. They will conduct experiments on each of the farms by doing one method, their existing method, and then making some changes to try and reduce the stress, and then look at a range of behaviours and other indicators such as calf weight. Next slide, please. And Stina says that the best thing about the group is that they're really positive and engaged, but as you might imagine across Sweden and Norway, it's one of the challenges is the distance and the language. Even though the language is similar, it's not quite the same. And this is one of the farms here. They typically are kept together for about 8 weeks in Norway and have an automatic milking system, and the calves are running like this, often with a calf creep area. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we did find was this really large variety of practices across all of our farmers that we've got involved. And so I'm just going to run through some of the different types that we have with you now so that we're all on the same page. Next slide, please. So I guess one of the first major differences, and a lot of these definitions have been thrashed out in this nice research paper, which several of the authors are within the consortium. So whether it's a cow with its own calf, and that's a dam calf contact system, or whether it's a foster cow system, that's probably one of the main differences, and where the foster cow might have 2, 3 or more, sometimes calves, maybe their own calf plus additional ones, or calves that are not their own at all. Next slide, please. And then whether they have full-time contact during day and night, only separated for milking and feeding, or part-time contact with some period of separation for a longer period. And when that time of separation starts and so on, this is very, very variable between the farms that we've seen. Next slide, please. And then within a housing system, whether the system is what we call cow-driven, so the calves are in a place and the cow can choose to go and visit the calves or not, but the calves can't get to see the cow, or calf-driven, where the cows are sort of kept somewhere and then there's, let's say, a creep area for the calves and the calves can choose to access the cow. Next slide, please. So calf-driven systems are quite common in free contact systems. So there'll be this creep area, probably with bedding, additional heating. Most of the resources are usually shared, but there might be some additional sort of calf-specific feed available to them. Next slide. Here's an example of what this might look like, either at pasture or in the barn. So you can see the sort of creep area on the right, specific area that's deep bedded, and the calves can go in there, probably often might be a bit warmer, sometimes with heaters and so on. Next slide, please. And then cow-driven systems are less common, so it is easier to limit the contact between the cows and calves, and therefore you can sort of control it a little bit more, and you usually involves a gate, often with an automatic milking system that then allows access for the cow once she's been through the system to access her calves. Next slide. And here's an example of it in practice in Sweden. So the cows are in a loose housing system. They go through the milking robot. When they go through, that's when they can access this straw-bedded calf area. So here it is in the photograph. And then when they choose to leave, they leave and they can't get back in until they go through the milking robot again. Next slide, please. And we've seen lots of different things that vary as well. So the type of weaning that's practiced, the age that it happens, the process, whether or not things like nose flaps are used, so that there's a difference between social and nutritional weaning, the breeds, whether it's happening at pasture, organic status, how often the cows are milked. All of this is very variable, and farmers have really made it work in their own systems for their own farms. Next slide, please. But yes, I think everybody agrees that this early management is critical, and that's something that I'm sure we'll come on to on subsequent webinars. Colostrum intake and suckling bonding is absolutely essential, ensuring a different relationship between humans and calves and cows, and setting up that expectation that they are going to be returning from milking to their calf for cows that have been used to going through the system can take a little bit of time. Next slide, please. One of the things we've seen is that farms are really also varied in how they are marketing this. So sometimes they're selling direct to the public, sometimes just into the normal systems. That's been one of the biggest surprises, actually, that there are many farmers, it turns out, practicing cow-calf contact system who don't have Instagram pages or anything. They're just doing it and they're just selling the milk into the normal milk system. Some people are focusing their marketing on the cow-calf contact, and some people are focusing on other things such as raw milk or glass bottles or something like this. And next slide, please. So finally, we'd love you to get involved in TransformDairyNet. Do go to our website, sign up for the newsletter, as Mathilde said. Take the survey. There is one for vets and farmers and advisors. Even if you're not doing any work or not very familiar, we'd really love to hear your thoughts and interest in your existing knowledge. Please do promote the survey more widely. If you're interested in joining a hub, then the contact details are on the website. Or if there isn't a hub in your country, maybe you want to start your own and just get in touch with the project then. And we will be having a European-wide meeting in Romania in May, and we'd love to see you all. So please do look at coming to that. Also, information on the website. And if you'd like to volunteer for the project, then just get in touch with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Siobhan, for setting this scene and giving us this overview of TDN and CCC systems. Let's now move to our second speaker. So Ulrike Sorge, Head of Udder Health and Milk Quality at the Bavarian Animal Health Services, will share the CCC frame in Bavaria, the challenges of switching to CCC, and a lesson learned from it. Ulrike, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here today and talk a little bit about my experiences. I figured I'm going to talk a little bit first about, next slide please, about what Bavaria is like, just because the world has so different structures of dairy farming. Bavaria is in the southern region of Germany and has really small farms, but we have a lot of them and a lot of cows. About a quarter of the cows of Germany are located in my neck of the woods. And the majority of cows that are actually being milked are dual purpose breed of Simmental. Other health is pretty good, yay. And we did a survey last year, and it turns out that about 3% of dairy farms use actually cow-calf rearing. We do have it predominantly nurse cows, and one of the things when I was checking out the data, because the Bavarian Animal Health Services do consulting and diagnostics and research, and so I looked at whether, for example, we would see more mastitis in those herds, and I could not confirm any of this. Same other health in the herds in Bavaria that use CCC rearing. Next, please. And the majority of farms that are traditionally using CCC are actually organic farms, and they usually do block calving, or seasonal calving. And I was so lucky to actually help a bunch of farms transition who did not use seasonal calving but year-round calving. And they are of various sizes, between 48 and 140 cows. And the whole thing started because a creamery said, hey, this is a good thing. This is something that we can market well. Please do it. And then they said to the farmers, please come up with something that you're standing for when you're saying we do CCC raising. And it turns out that they said, okay, we want to make sure that the calves get fed the colostrum with a bucket, and they were preferring nurse cows over their own dam, so basically not dam rearing, and they also wanted to keep all of them. Actually, they also included the bull calves for about 12 weeks. That was the plan in the cow-calf contact. Next, please. And so because these farms clearly made a pretty immediate switch, my job as a veterinarian was to go in and come up with a way of refurbishing the existing barns and the existing space that was there without cow-calf rearing in mind. How could we make this, retrofit this so that it actually could work? So besides the factors that you have to consider when you're doing this is, in a seasonal calving, it's easy. Everybody gets born at a fairly similar time frame, and then you can deal with it. But if you have fairly small farms, over the course of a year, you might have one calf a week. And so how do you figure out how many calves per week do you have? How many nurse cows do you need? Do you have peak calving time? So if you're only expecting one calf a week, and obviously they have to stay there for 12 weeks, you have to come up basically, how do I manage enough groups? How do I set up the space? And how do I have maybe an area with extra space in case I have a calving peak and still keep it manageable, right? So if you have a large herd, it's way easier because they have much more calves and you can easily combine them in a small group of 2 to 3 calves on a cow or with a cow if you go this way. And so in this case, it was a lot of thinking with the farmers, and it worked out quite well. Having said that, like I said, I was consulting on 8 farms, and the 8 farms, basically we chose 8 different ways of doing it, but I bring only 3 different ways. But that's exactly how it is. That's why I can't even give you the exact, space requirement or anything like this, because every single farm is different, every setup is different, and you have to make sure that what's there, if you do a retrofitting, what is the floor looking like? You know, if you have really big gaps in the floor, the poor calf hoofs might get stuck in it, or the head gates, if the calf gets stuck in it and kind of suffocates pretty bad. If the water troughs are too high, they can't reach it. So basically you have to think about that part, and what's available. You have to think about, where can I make a little microclimate for the calves if it gets cold, because in Bavaria we do also have winters, not as cold as in Minnesota or so, but still it gets cold. And also you need to make sure that if you're having them with the cows in the freeze stalls, so the cubicles, if they're lying with them, if that's your mode of action, how do you make sure that the cow doesn't lie on top of the calf, or that the calf can actually escape? What are the escape routes? So you kind of have to think about it and make do with what's there, and kind of a little bit MacGyver it, to be honest. And but that's the fun of it. And then also the big challenge is, because calves have clearly different requirements than an adult cow, a mature cow. You have to make sure that you keep the bedding environment clean, because otherwise that's a measure for catastrophe. If you can't get in there, can't clean, you're going to have crypto on your farm ASAP, and that's really hard to deal with, even in this system. So it has to be an easy way of accessing cow and calf and their environment. Next, please. And so once you figured this out, or at least thought about figuring it out, and I strongly suggest that you suggest your clients, before you start building an entire barn, come up with a mock-up or temporary solution so that you can get the kinks out of the system, so that it actually works for you. It's also way cheaper. And and then obviously once you have figured out your system, what might work for you, you need to find, obviously you have to stock the pens now, and you need to have cows. And honestly, there I couldn't really help the farmers, because they know their cows. Every single cow has their own personality, and some cows are fabulous nurse cows. Usually they would take a cow that had freshly calved, and she would take her calf, and they would make sure that there would be other calves with this cow. And obviously you have to look, how is she? Because she can be the most motherly dam to her own calf, but she can be vicious as hell to the poor other little suckers who are trying to access the udder. So you obviously have to find a way to find those cows. And then if you have good nurse cows, then you better make sure that you keep them. So make sure that they're going to get bred again and so forth, that they later on are going to be there. And also from experience, because this just happened in 2019, you have cows who love to be nurse cows, and they might be fabulous nurse cows for 2-3 years, and then suddenly they're like, nope, I'm done with this, and you can't make them nurse any calves anymore. They're done. And so again, look at the cow, look at how she's behaving, and that she also lets other calves suckle. And you want to make sure that obviously they get something to suckle. So you want to have a cow that actually has milk in her udder, and enough milk and good udder health. If she has too much milk for the little ones, then put a bigger calf in there so that it gets cleaned out the udder. But again, you have to look at the cows and the calves. Anyway, so that brings me to the next slide. So when you're working with the cows, like I said, one of the things that people were very adamant is that they make sure, especially if it's not their own dam, that the calf that's born gets its colostrum in a proper way, just to make sure that it actually is suckling enough. I have a picture of another calf in a couple of slides where the calf really took a few days to figure out where the udder was. So you really have to make sure that the calf actually goes there, initiates the contact, goes and suckles, and also maybe fights off the other calves, and basically stays its ground. But that's your job. But at least you don't have to carry buckets anymore. And you have to make sure, do they drink enough? It's a lot about looking at calves, and that sounds daunting initially, or cows and calves. It sounds daunting, but it was quite nice to see that a lot of the farmers, they were like, oh, this is stupid, we don't want to do this really, but okay, the creamery is asking us to do it. So, and they weren't really convinced. It was always the women that were convinced and said, oh, this is lovely. And it was so funny because one of the most critical farmers, he says, I can't go back. This is so lovely to watch them. And so they really enjoy watching the cows and the calves. And but again, you have to watch it, because also you have to assess the udder of the cow, because if she develops mastitis, it happened also on one farm, and he said, I'll never ever not check the udder of the cow again on a daily basis, because she kicked away all of the calves. So you had not only injured calves, but also they didn't get anything to eat. So, and he said, yeah, I was so busy on the field, but yeah, he'll never ever do it, again. And so in order to also do it safely, because safety first, you also, whatever you're building, make sure that you have an easy way of trapping the cow, fixating her, so that you can access her to actually assess what's going on, or also kind of have a calf bring to the cow so that it can suckle, so that you don't get run over or anything like this. So just be on the safe side with this one. Next one, please. And so I just brought, because I don't have that much time, I just brought 3 different farmers. So this is, or farms. And so the cow that you're seeing here is called Viola. So they all have names. And this is our smallest farm. They only had 30 cows. And obviously you didn't have enough calves throughout the year to kind of have 2-3 same age calves the entire time at a dam. And so what they did a little pen, and the cow, Viola in this case, she would always beeline it to the calves. They would let her twice a day, sometimes even more, because she wanted to go and check on the calves. She was a fabulous nurse cow, and so she just went and took care of the calves. It worked for this farm. So next one, please. This is another farm. Again, they didn't have, like I said, none of them had facilities really for cow-calf raising. And so they just took an old tool shed and made it into 2 paddocks, kind of mirrored. And so the cows were in a sort of free stall with a little room to walk. And then on the right and left, you have little calf creeps. So just with tons of straw in it. And they also made because they had to rebuild it or fit it in there later, they put the water troughs really low so that the calves could access all of it. And it's a lot of manual labor, but they love it, and they're still doing it, even though they got a little bit bigger as a farm. Next, please. This farm, actually, I was kind of bending the truth a little bit. One of the farms had already done the CCC before the creamery asked for it, and they had developed a system after a long time of trial and error. So basically the cow is calving, and the calf stays very close in the fresh pen with the calves, so that they have really close eye on it, on her, also with the calves, and plus they can access the robot if need be, And then they go into another 3-sided shed where you have several pens. And the black dots in the middle are where you can swing the gates, so that you can easily go with a skid steer in and out to clean out. And the cows and calves are moving through till the calves are in the wean pen on the far right. And because he's mixing, and in his case, it's very interesting because he's mixing cows and calves a lot. There is not that much of a bondage between calves and particular cows. He just looks that it works and that the calves are feeding daily. But in the end, it's also very quiet at weaning. And it's kind of cute because the cows are always positioning themselves really close to the gate so that the weaned calves still can have a sip or two. And that brings me to the last, next please. One, this is a farm that used initially, because it didn't have any other room, they used the old calf area, and they basically had just a little area fenced off for the very, very little calves. And here you can see the little calves that took a few days to figure out where the udder of a cow and not of an elephant is, on the right picture. And so so they had it like this, and it was really hard to clean, and it was tricky. And so, but they liked it really very much. Initially they were not so sure, but then they really liked it. Next slide, please. So they decided, well, we're going to build a new barn anyway for the milking cows. So they have about 120 and 2 robots. But right next to it, because they like it so much, they actually built an entire new calf barn with also big area with in the front is where the cows are with cubicles, and then the back you have the bedded pack for the calves, but it's actually just straw. And they can even go outside. There is a little outdoor area, and they're still planning that on the far right then that there's also going to be pasture access, so that there's going to be a lot of room. And they are also moving the calves and cows through. So initially they're in a little pen, very small, kind of almost what you know from sheep and lambing season, where you have the dam and the lamb together. Here they do the same initially, just to have a really good eye on them for the first couple of days, and then they move into the pens. And one of the things that's one of the biggest challenges in this entire system on all of the farms, and one of them stopped because of it, was the weaning noise. Because you might have a lot of hollering, and sometimes you also have cows that go crazy. And so how they fixed it, and a lot of people also did it, was because they moved them through also in groups as calves. And so they had their buddies, and they moved the entire calf group to the last pen, so that they still had access and sight to the cow. Well, access, they have sight with the cows and smell her and everything else. They're with their buddies, but they're away from the cows. And he said, I don't have a problem with the weaning of the calves. Next. Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm saying here. I have had in the States, when I was still working in the States, I had a little farm with 30 cows. They were and they actually had the calves with the cows, their own dams, and they used the quiet wean. The nose flaps worked like a charm. But basically, yeah, you have to make sure that you find a system to keep them calm and reduce the stress. You might have the cows once you kind of move them out of the calf pen back into working life mom's area of milking with the robot, you might have milk letdown problems, but just wait for a couple of days and then it's going to sort itself out usually. Next, please. And as a veterinarian, really, your job is to figure out a supportive way of kind of supporting them to get a new solution. The calves are healthier in all these farms. They might get diarrhea, but they don't really notice it. And one of the things that's really adorable is, and I think that's really good for the development, they're running around like crazy. And so they're very, very fit. And most of the farms said, we don't have any losses anymore, barely anything to treat. So as a veterinarian, it's not very helpful, but yeah, it works. Next, please. So basically, my experience is if you make it work and if you stick to it and look at the animals, it does work. But you have to make sure, like, it has to have enough space. You have to make sure that it's clean. Otherwise, it's going to get a boomerang. And you have to assess daily the animals. It's not an automatic system. You have to consider the cost, depending on where you are, for bedding time and any environmental laws or building laws, what you can do. But in general, the people really liked it, and almost all of the farms, minus the one, are still using or practicing cow-calf contact in my experience. So, yeah, thanks for listening, and thanks.
Thank you very much, Ulrike, for this very practical perspective of CCC farm, and especially in Bavaria. So now I'm pleased to welcome our final speaker, and it's William McCarthy, veterinary surgeon and director at Galloway Vets Limited, and vet at the Ethical Dairy, which is a pioneer farm in CCC. He will present a case study on the pathological impact and solutions in CCC systems, focusing especially on mastitis. So William, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'd like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all today, and it's great to see so many people here. Next slide, please, Evie. So just a little bit about us. As Matilda said, my name is William McCarthy. I've been a vet since 2007. I work currently at Galloway Vets, which is a mixed species first opinion practice in southwest Scotland, We've been around for over 150 years. I haven't. But yeah, we're in the heart of dairy country in Scotland. The vast majority of our caseload within the practice is farm animal, and within that it's mostly large scale, intensely managed dairy farms. And so a little bit unlike our average dairy farm is around 750 cows. They are mostly all conventionally managed, and we look to try and prioritise herd health and welfare to try and maintain productivity on those farms, and on all the farms that we go to. Next slide, please. So we're going to have a quick run through of one of the problems, or the only really problem that we've faced in relation to cow-calf contact at Renton, as we know, or the ethical dairy, as some of you may have heard them as. A little bit of background to those: it's an 120 cow organic dairy herd, which is a split block calving herd with roughly equal numbers of cows calving in April and May, and September and October. They breed all their replacement heifers at home, and David and the team there have really been pioneers of the cow-calf contact system. The current system that they're using has been in operation since 2016, where the calves are reared on their dams until around 6 months old, and it's a free access system to their dams. They are separated for a little while overnight, but predominantly it's a free access system, and the cows are milked once a day whilst the calves are suckling, and then they go back to twice a day milking after they've been weaned. Interestingly, and part of the reason that this came up, the issue that we have come up, is that the milk at Renton is used on site in their own creamery to produce an unpasteurized cheese. Next slide, please. And so I was asked to speak about the challenges of working with cow-calf contact systems, and in my experience, there's not an awful lot of difference between that and conventionally managed farms. We did see initially a little bit of problems in neonatal diarrhea and pneumonias in the calves, and really, like every other farm that we go to, colostrum really is the key to managing that, and also identifying the particular risk factors that on any individual farm and trying to come up to deal with them. We did notice some impacts on heat detection and return to estrus whilst the calves were suckling, and a little bit of problems with the lactational and estrus, and around udder health. I've seen a slight reduction in clinical mastitis, although clinical mastitis has always been pretty good at Renton. But we're going to explore this possibility that the calves on a free access system are potentially acting as fomites for contagious pathogens. Next slide, please. So, as I said, at Renton, mastitis has always been pretty good. Clinical mastitis rates have always been really low. They've been very acceptable. Currently sitting around 16%, and that's not bad for this area. Bulk tank somatic cell count were always really good. They were consistently, when the cow-calf contact system started, between 175 and 200,000, which for an organic farm, I think is always is pretty good. But within that, there was always significant variation between individual cows, particularly across the parity groups, with the older cows often having higher cell counts, and often having higher cell counts for multiple tests in a lactation. And there was also the seasonal variation that goes along with a split block calving pattern, with cows approaching drying off, often having higher cell counts. But at Renton, they have a really good milking routine. They have a tandem parlour, which allows cows to really get individual attention, and they have a really good pre and post milking routine to try and minimise the chances of infection in the parlour. Next slide, please. But we're going back now to about 2020. We did see a sudden rise in bulk tank somatic cell counts, to the point where by early 2021 we were sitting around 340,000. And in the graph in the bottom left of your screen, you can see that the red line is the mean somatic cell count for cows in the herd. As you see, it rose from 150,000 up towards 340. But along with that, we also saw an increase in the proportion of the herd which had a cell count above 200,000 cells. So we had higher bulk tank cell counts, and a greater number of cows contributing towards that. The cheese producers the cheesemakers on the farm also began to report back that they were getting increased numbers of Staphylococcus aureus isolates within mid-maturation cheese samples that were being submitted as part of the food standards requirements that they have to match. Luckily, the Staph aureus infection levels in the cheese did drop down towards the end of maturation, and all the cheese was perfectly safe. But milk filters were also repeatedly submitted for cultures, and we were getting really high levels of staphylococcal species returning on those as well. As you can see from the bottom right of the graph, from about late 2019 onwards, you started seeing higher levels of staphylococcus on the milk filters. Next slide, please. So whenever I was approached by the farm to investigate what was going on here, the fact that it was a cow-calf contact system didn't really factor that much into how I approached it and how we dealt with it. The first thing we want to do, as on any dairy farm, is to try and classify the origins of these issues. So we want to think about whether or not we are having infection occurring during lactation, or whether it's something that was happening during the dry period. And again, we then wanted to try and figure out whether we're dealing with a contagious source of infections, or whether it was an environmental source. So most of the cows at Rainton were developing new intramammary infections during lactation, and the cheese cultures that regularly identified Staph aureus gave us a good indication that we were dealing with an infection, a contagious pathogen. The widespread levels of intramammary infections, as identified by cell counts across the herd, without any particular cows being incredibly high, also indicated that we had a grumbling background problem of contagious spread. So I was able to classify Rainton as having a contagious lactation mastitis pattern. Next slide, please. So the next thing we had to then do was sit down and have a look through the data. We did have individual cell count data for the farms. We had what we called milk recording, quarterly milk recording. So 4 times a year, the milk samples were taken and results were collated and available to us as serial and sequential test samples. But between that, we had what we referred to as non-recorded milk recording, where the tests were reported back simply as a spreadsheet. So I did have to conduct a manual review of each of the cows on the farm and go through their cell counts for that current lactation and the lactation before. When I also went out to review the conditions on the farm, the environment at Rainton is really good. It's excellent. It's a purpose-built environment for cow-calf contact system. Everything was clean, hygienic. The milking routine again was excellent, with good simulation of milk letdown, minimal over milking, and a really good standard of hygiene. But what struck us at that point was whether we had the potential for calves to act as fomites for infectious or contagious mastitis during cross suckling. Next slide, please, Ellie. So it's not uncommon when you walk into the shed, particularly during the winter when cows are housed, to find multiple calves suckling one cow. And if you wait long enough, you'll find that they might well all move off to suckle another cow whilst you're there. And as we know that Staph aureus can colonise the mucosal surfaces of the body, including the nose, throat, and intestinal tract. And so the question at that point was whether or not these calves were acting in a similar way to the liners in the milking of the epithelium of the mouth, that was then depositing staphylococcal bacteria onto the teats during suckling without any form of post-milking disinfection. And again, because calves suckle multiple times a day, we're also seeing repeated opening of the teat sphincter. And does this facilitate bacterial invasion of the udder? You would think that with calves suckling multiple times a day, that would help to clear out the udder, the teat canal, and help reduce some of that. But are we seeing a problem here with the calves depositing bacteria on the skin and then allowing the teats to open and close several times through the day? Next slide, please. So we had to come up with a control strategy which was similar to what we would probably have done in any conventionally managed herd. The idea was to try and identify infected or high-risk cows as quickly as possible, to treat those infections where possible, usually through an increased dry period or with antibiotic dry cow therapy, or to have these cows removed from the herd if that was necessary. We then wanted to try and reduce the potential for transmission between cows. So we had hygiene measures at milking. The liners were changed in the parlour. They were probably a bit overdue. Post-milking disinfection was improved, and we started post-milking cluster disinfection as well. But there was no real possibility to reduce the risk of transmission or the potential risk of transmission due to cross-suckling whilst these cows were all running as one group. Next slide, please. So the cows then were divided into 3 categories based on the serial somatic cell count data and their stage of lactation, gestational status. And luckily, the vast majority of cows were considered to be low risk, and we continued to milk those and continued to manage them in the system that they use on farm. The medium risk cows were cows that had 1 or 2 high cell counts during that lactation. These cows, I'd recommend that the cow and calf were segregated from the cow and calf group. They could be managed with other cows which didn't have calf suckling to try and limit the potential for them. And unfortunately, there were 18 high risk cows that were repeatedly high cell count cows, often with intermammary infections that span from one lactation to the next. And I'd recommend that they were simply removed from the herd to limit the risk of transmission to other cows. Now, that removal could have meant that they were dried off immediately, that they became a suckler cow, and them and their calf went off to another shed or to the field to be reared separately. Or unfortunately, if they weren't pregnant and they weren't rearing a calf at the time, that they were culled from the herd. Next slide, please. So, following this, the bulk tank cell counts began to fall really quite quickly. The new infection rate reduced significantly, and importantly, the Staphylococcus aureus isolates during cheese production dropped off massively, and everybody was a lot happier on that side of the things as well. But it has required a lot of ongoing management. It's not something that is necessarily gone away as such. We continue to identify high-risk cows, either through milk recording individual somatic cell count data, or one of the things they do on farm is to do California mastitis testing after calving to try and identify cows with a high risk of carrying a contagious intermammary infection. And these high-risk cows are removed, and they rear their calves as suckler cows, essentially, before being removed from the herd. It is unfortunately one of the main reasons why cows leave the herd at Rainton, because it is something that we have to actively manage. Next slide, please. And as we can see from this slide, this is current somatic cell count data for the farm. So, put it simply, the green line on the top of the graph is the rolling 3-month average somatic cell count for each individual cow. Sorry, the rolling 3-month average and proportion of the herd which are above 200,000 cells per mil. So these are our high cell count cows, and currently we're sitting somewhere in around 10%. Which I would say is really an excellent result, and with a herd that's got a history of contagious mastitis, it's a really difficult thing to achieve. But more importantly, the blue line at the bottom of that graph is our rolling average proportion of cows that are chronic high cell count cows that have 3 or more high cell counts in the last lactation, and this is sitting below 5%, which is excellent, and it's something that we would struggle to achieve on any farm. Next slide, please. And when you look at this graph, you can see that it's really a testament. The previous chart is a testament to the hard work that goes in at Rainton to try and keep this right, because this is what we call the new lactation new infection rate. So this is the proportion of cows which develop a new intramammary infection between one cell count recording and the next during lactation, and this remains really high. This remains something that we see it routinely is cows developing new high cell counts, but because of the way that it's managed and that the high risk cows are identified and removed, we're able to limit the impact of that and keep everything under control at the bulk tank level. Next slide, please. So in summary, my approach as a vet to a cow-calf contact system isn't actually any different really to any other farm that I would go to. Every farm that we attend as a practice or individual, each of them have their own unique risk factors, each of them have their own unique things that they're trying to achieve, although from the outside they may look very similar. But the principles are always the same for any disease investigation. It's attention to detail, attempting to identify the risks that are unique to each farm, and trying to come up with a pragmatic and practical control solution for that individual situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William, for sharing this insightful case study and veterinary experience from your practice. I'm sure it gives our attendee a very practical example of how a vet can help a CCC farm, and how it also quite similar to another farm. So we hope you all appreciated this free presentation, and now we will move to the Q&A session, as we already have plenty of questions for our speakers. If we don't manage to respond to all, especially according to the hours, we will make sure to collect all the questions and to respond to them and share it to you. So don't hesitate to ask a question. Let me start with the first one. What was asked, I think, during Ulrike's presentation, but I'm sure to have Siobhan and William feedback on it will be really interesting. It was, what is in general the health status of the farms that practice CCC? Ulrike,
I'm just going to start. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead. But it's the same. I mean, basically, it's based on management if you're looking at the cows. And so the ones that I know are well managed, because otherwise it doesn't work.
Siobhan, Will, any?
Well, just to add that, I guess that the evidence suggests exactly that basically well-managed farms are, have very good health status in CCC systems.
Well, it seems as the other speakers that there's nothing unique about it, and a well-managed farm is a well-managed farm, and the health status on both cow-calf contact farms and conventional farmings is dependent on the level of animal husbandry that's practiced and the staff on the farms, and they're the people that make it work or not work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope we respond to it. And if you have any comment also to add in the comment, participate. Siobhan, the first question was, how do the calves receive milk if the cows first go through the milking robot before having contact with them? Aren't the cows completely milk out of that process?
Yes, that's a really good question. So I guess the first thing to say is that there's normally a bit of residual milk left at milking, and it's often the sort of higher energy milk as well, which the calves are really good at getting. And it's actually a version of this is really common in cow-calf contact systems, for example, to separate at night, then to milk in the morning, and then allow the calves to have access. And don't forget that the cow in these higher yielding, let's call them higher yielding dairy cows, is able to produce much more milk than just one calf needs. So even if it starts slowly at that point, then the cow stays and the calf continues to suckle and easily receives enough milk during the day.
Thank you. Another question for Will. Do you observe an increased risk of Staph aureus mastitis during productive life of the individual in which you observe mucosal colonization with Staph aureus when they were calves?
Yeah, so we haven't actually looked at that in detail, I guess, whether or not that colonization of the intestinal tract of the calves is then leading to other health problems later on once they've calved. It's a small sample population, I guess, on one farm, so we haven't noticed it. But that's not to say that it isn't there. In the same way that the practices on conventional farms, such as feeding mastitic milk or waste milk to dairy calves, would have the same impact. But yeah, it's not something that we've seen. But as I say, it's an ongoing management situation at the farm, really, and they do pay a lot of attention to try and weed out any or reduce the risk of any cows becoming infected. So it's not something that we've observed, but it's not something that would be impossible, certainly.
All right. I think the next one will be for Ulrike. Does the creamery Digital collect the meal separately, and do they pay extra for the CC standards?
I'm not quite sure how much separate they collect them, but definitely has a premium to it, yes. So for all the effort that goes in it.
All right. Siobhan, come back to you. Are your experiences regarding the health in the foster/nurse cows? I think Ulrike is also could be interesting to have your point of view.
Yeah, I think, Ricky, do you want to?
Oh, sure. I mean, I actually tried to kind of make a little study out of it, when I was transitioning those farms, and I wanted to get the quarter milk samples from the cows to later match them with any mastitis that shows up in the barn. I couldn't do it because they were all healthy and I couldn't find anything, so I gave up. And so, but I can at least say that because the farms are really small and we actually sample the entire herd usually for quarter milk samples, and I have several years before and several years after, and there's no change in the microflora, let's call it that way. So there was nothing that I could point to poor udder health or anything like this.
All right. Well, I think this one will be for you, if I don't make a mistake again. How do you ensure proper rumen development in calf suckling up to 6 months in both pasture and freestyle burn condition have lost does not fit? Oh, sorry, Halon does not fit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Certainly, hay or conserved forage and grass alone won't stimulate enough rumen development. The calves are on. They have a creep area where they're offered concentrate feeding, and for both the pasture-based ones and housed ones, so they're offered concentrate feeding to help try and stimulate rumen development. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things is that they imitate the cows right away, so really early on, and sometimes you don't even want them to feed the TMR or anything, but they do kind of nibble and try it, and so you have to make sure that the calves, when they're not really fully ready, don't eat too much of it, because they just like to imitate the cows, the cool ones.
I think I will ask one last question, and maybe it will be interesting to have your point of view of all. So, did any of the farmers that you know experience any safety issue when handling the calf or when going into the pen when cows and calf were interacting?
None of my farms were reporting anything like this, but they were also very cautious. And again, they would make sure that the cows were safe to handle in the first place. And if there was anything, then I think you have to be always aware. It's still animals, and but thankfully, knock on wood, so far so good.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, certainly. Again, you've got to respect the fact that these are large animals, and that you need to be careful around them. And certainly, there's always going to be some cows that you need to be more cautious with around calving. But typically speaking, cows in sheds with calves, they don't seem to be any greater risk than they would be without them. Again, it's as Ulrike says, it's a case of trying to make sure you've got the right cows for the system, and any cows that are aggressive, whatever, aren't retained.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we have, we've definitely heard from farmers who have kind of managed their interactions with the cows and calves, bearing in mind the level of protectiveness that they're expecting, but very much the farmers usually advocate to us that that relationship that's built between the farmer within the very first few days is what's kind of key, and the trust that the cow builds up that you will be there, and the calf will still be there when she gets back, let's say from milking. This type of thing is very important. One farmer described to us how they used to use a very particular wheelbarrow to take the calves away from the cows, and once they transitioned to a cow-calf system, when they brought that wheelbarrow back into the barn, the cows went crazy because they thought they associated that with having the calves taken away. So they quickly learned to not bring that wheelbarrow back unless, if it wasn't going to be to do with taking the calves away.
Yeah, I would agree.
One of the things also, speaking of animals, we're talking all the time about cows. We also must ensure that the farmers are interacting with the calves, because otherwise you're going to have rodeo later on. So you have to make sure that you actually go into the pen and interact with the calves. Because otherwise they're just running away, and you might have problems later on with the milking parlor or such. That's what I hear from some people, not my people, but from some other farms in the States in this case, where they adamantly said this. And then mine actually interact with the calf, so they didn't see it. But yeah, the other ones cautioned for it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you very much. I think we will stop here for the question. We will make sure to gather them and send you all the responses for the question we didn't respond. And so I would like to warmly thank our speakers, so Siobhan, Ulrike, and William, for their valuable contribution. Thank you all also for joining and participating. It was around 150 persons, which was a lot. And I would like to express our gratitude to the TDN team who work on this webinar, so Yael, Heba, and Maureen especially. We hope this session has given you useful perspective to take back to your daily work and inspires new ideas. The recording will be shared soon. And also a survey will be sent afterward, and it will be really helpful to have your feedback on it. We look forward to continuing the TDN journey with you in our upcoming webinars. So please stay tuned with our newsletter or social media. Thank you all again, and we wish you a very good rest of the day. Bye.